Hey guys, welcome back to Witch Baby Wednesdays. I am Darian, and this is the series where I share my experience coming into witchcraft for all of you witch babies and witchy curious folks. So today I want to talk about, I think absolutely, the most controversial part of witchcraft, and that is, what do witches pray to, and who do they worship, or what do they worship? It's a pretty big topic. So if you want to get into that, I'm going to be talking about theology. I'm going to be talking about my own personal spiritual beliefs. If you want to hear all about that, keep watching.
One day I'll be a queen with a kingdom all for me, and I'll cherish everything as I drop to my knees, 'cause I know how dark it.
Hey guys, welcome back. If you are new here and you have yet to subscribe to the channel, be sure to subscribe if you want to get videos just like this. I also have hundreds of videos that could literally change your life. It has changed many people's lives. I've been very blessed to have been able to touch the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. My videos have been watched over 500,000 times, and I'm so blessed to have been able to touch that many lives. And so if you feel called and if you want to gain some freedom in your own life, just even outside of witchcraft, I was doing a series called Freedom Friday for about 4 or 5 years, and so every week, almost every week, and so there are lots and lots of really beautiful spiritual material and personal development and all of that sort of stuff. I am a spiritual coach, essentially like a life coach with God involved, and so just coming into witchcraft this year, it's been quite an experience for me. And so I want to talk about probably the most confusing thing in witchcraft. Well, there's lots of confusing things in witchcraft, but I think that what I notice online, and for you guys who are following me, and for a lot of new witches, and also a lot of people that don't know witches and don't understand witches, the biggest thing is the misunderstanding of what witches pray to. Is there some sort of God that we pray to? Is it different than the God that other people pray to, or whatever? And so what I want to say, my intention here is to help those who are really looking for the spirituality in what it means to be a witch. Now, you can practice witchcraft and not have spiritual beliefs. You can be atheist and practice witchcraft. And so I think that that's why people really struggle with finding, what's really at the core of this. And it is personal. It is meant to be personal. But I also see online, and I understand, I've been working, as I just said, I've been working with thousands of people over the years. And so, I think everybody is looking for that spiritual path that feels right to them and where they feel most accepted. And so I think that people turn to witchcraft because maybe they feel like a hard no for some other religions, and they're kind of like, okay, well, is this for me? And I think a lot of you guys and a lot of witchy curious people and people that just want to veer out of their religion, which are people that find my channels all the time, I think that you need something that says, where is the spiritual basis here? It becomes very difficult. In witchcraft books, you don't find that. In a lot of witchcraft books, not all, but a lot of witchcraft books, you find, spells. You find do this, this, and that, and this will happen. And you don't find the very core, you don't find the theology behind it. And, I think that reason is because all witches pray to something different. And not all witches, but there's so many different, to practice witchcraft, you don't have to be a witch. And to practice witchcraft, and even to be a witch, you don't have to pray to the same thing. So with all that said, I'm going to go into the different types of beliefs that witches have. So there is not really, there's this umbrella of witch, there's this umbrella of paganism, which is what all of these sort of spiritual beliefs and practices in witchcraft and Wicca and all of that sort of falls under the umbrella of paganism, but that doesn't necessarily mean what it means for a Christian. So somebody who is a Christian, and there are different beliefs within Christianity, there's different branches of Christianity and Catholicism and all of that, but for the most part, the belief is the same. The belief in one God is the same. It's not like that for witches. It's not like that for pagans. So let me get into it. Let me just put my drink down, and I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of the theology of witches. Okay, so there is paganism. Paganism, and again, I'm not an expert on this, but I've done lots of research, and hopefully I do this justice. Please, for my seasoned witches, correct anything that I get wrong down below. But I believe I'm going to get the heart of this, so... And they're telling me to have faith in myself. Trust myself. Okay, so I trust myself. Okay, so there's paganism. Paganism is actually not a religion. It's really not anything, to be honest. It's sort of formed into a religion, but it was originally like a derogatory term that Catholics and really Roman Catholics referred to those who did not practice their religion, and they actually practice polytheism. So polytheism, there's monotheism, which is Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism. There is one God that they pray to. It's a one sort of entity that created all things, for whatever lack of some better explanation, but it's one, right? Polytheism is poly. It's multiple. So the old Roman Catholics started calling these people pagans. The Bible, you hear them called heathens, yada, yada, yada. So it just was it really was a derogatory term for anybody that didn't practice their religion. It's sort of interesting though, because the history of paganism dates back much further than Christianity. So it's really just ironic. So basically what happened, and I'm not saying anything against anyone's religion. I honor all of you and your belief systems. I'm not saying anybody's wrong or right or whatever. This is just history, okay? Paganism, the practice of witchcraft, the practice of praising nature and all of that stuff, and healing and using healing practices, was being used for thousands upon thousands of years before Christianity came to be. There was no devil, there was no Satan, none of that existed. There was no concept of that, there was no entity, there was none of that existed. And then Christianity and Catholicism came to be, and they actually created Satan. And so what they did as a way to become the majority in order to control everyone and everything, they said, this is God, there's only one true God. If you don't follow this God, you are a heathen and you practice satanic worship and rituals. Everything that is outside of this religion is satanic, point blank, period. It didn't matter what it was, and that's just how it was. And so they put things like saying witchcraft, which was what all the witches were doing, was of satanic whatever. And so it started to, it really was just, if you can imagine back then, everything was about survival. You needed to create a kingdom. Your kingdom needed to be the grandest kingdom. You had to overpower other kingdoms in order to gain control. And the easiest way to do this was by brainwashing people, by mind control. How do you mind control somebody? You tell them that the God that created them is going to put you in hell if you don't follow this dogma, okay? So that is the basis of the devil and why everybody thinks that witches praise and worship Satan. For the most part, witches don't work with Satan, don't recognize Satan, they don't connect with Lucifer. Nobody's doing that. You know what I mean? Witches don't do that. these days, there are satanic witches. Now, let me talk about the history of Satanism. So, Satanism actually did not come to be an actual, quote, religion or an organized something until the 60s, which is also interesting because in the other side of it, Wicca, which is sort of the religion, a religious branch of paganism and witchcraft, where they use witchcraft, and they do pray to the god and the goddess. That was born sort of around the same time. I think maybe, I don't know, either a decade earlier or a decade before. Not that there's any connection with those two. I'm just saying that they're very young religions. So, but for many years, witches have been much before 1966 were people accused of Satanism. But Satanism actually did not exist as an organized religion until 1966. With that said, here is, through the history that I have researched, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I could very well be wrong, but through the history that I've researched, the birth of Satanism came like this. When Christianity came about, not only did they create Satan, they also took many of the witch holidays, just named them different, right? Called it Jesus's birthday, things like that. You know, called it Christmas, called it Easter, called it all these things, but all of these holidays were already being practiced by witches. They just kind of tweaked them a little bit, made it a little bit different, whatever. They even took a lot of the gods and goddesses that pagans were praying to, and they made them saints, right? So if you read in the Bible, a lot of the saints are actually Greek goddesses, you know, and it's mind-boggling how similar the history is between so many different civilizations that had no contact with one another or their religious beliefs or anything like that. So very, very interesting, that kind of stuff. Now, am I saying that Christianity is all bullshit? No, that's not what I'm saying. But the organization, the dogma, the part of it where there's all these rules, that shit was just made up by an organization that wanted to control the kingdom and thus also control as much of the land as they possibly can for the sake of probably survival back then, to be completely honest. But one of the things that they said was also satanic was sex. Sex outside of the marriage was satanic, but also having sex too many times in the year. There was only certain times that you were allowed to have sex with your husband and or wife, right? So the Catholic Church started telling already married folk when and when not they could sleep with their spouse. So because there was so much control by the Catholic Church, a lot of people said, okay, well, if Satan is the one telling me I can go bang my wife, then I'm going to worship that guy. And that is literally the birth of Satanism. So essentially, Satanism is really just, I have the right to seek pleasure. That's what Satanism is. I mean, I'm sure it's changed over the years, but for the most part, from what I've read, Satanism is individualism. It's, I'm not going to conform with what you tell me God is. And if you think that Satan is pleasure, then yes, I worship Satan. If I can have a beer and fuck my wife at the end of the day, then yeah, I'm satanic, whatever. And so that's actually, from what I've read, how the worship of Satan came about. It really was just the Catholic Church came in, and one day, can you imagine that the government all of a sudden said, these are the new rules, everything's different, and the way you're living life is wrong, and if you don't change it, you're gonna go to hell. A great deal of people, at least some chunk of it, would rebel against that. And so the Satanists back in the day were actually just the rebellion. That was just the rebels and the rebellion. I probably would have been one of them, to be honest. But the actual worship of Satan for the majority does not happen in witchcraft. Now, doesn't mean that there aren't satanic witches, that there aren't witches that do worship Satan. But I have to be honest, from what I have researched, and I have actually met satanic witches. I have met witches that work with demons and do black magic. I don't think that it is what we have been conditioned and brainwashed into believing it is. I believe it's just what I said, that it is an absolute affirming of their individuality, and they're saying, I will follow my bliss, I will follow my pleasure, and that's what I believe. Now, I can't speak for like some of the darker stuff, and there will be a video that I'm going to do about black magic versus white magic. That's a little bit different, but the majority of witches are good. We'll say, I don't want to say good and bad, but we'll just say that. So let's get into the theology of what witches actually believe. So that was sort of the history of like why people even believe that witches are doing dark magic and hexing and doing things that are harmful. I will say in Wicca, the religion Wicca, their rule of thumb, number one rule of thumb is harm ye none, do as ye will. And that just means don't do anything that's going to hurt anybody, because it's going to come back to you thrice times. And so there is not a practicing Wiccan that is doing any type of black magic or satanic things or anything like that. I am not Wiccan, but that also doesn't mean that I'm doing anything dark or satanic. It just means that I don't want an organized religion. Wicca, there is a lot of rules in Wicca for me, and that is beautiful for some people, and that works for some people. Some people like that kind of discipline, something that say, okay, show me a path and I'll take it, And I don't, that just isn't what I work with, but I do feel as if I am a witch. And I practice witchcraft. Some people practice witchcraft and don't feel as if they are witches, right? They don't prescribe to that. So there is polytheism, like I said, which is witches who worship many gods. So you've heard the stories of Greek mythology, gods and goddesses. That is what many witches practice, believe, pray to. A lot of witches will call on certain goddesses. They will call on the god and the goddess. Goddess Isis is basically considered the goddess. The god and the goddess is essentially the feminine and masculine aspects of God. The majority of pagans believe and follow and worship sort of nature. So that would be considered animism. What that says is that everything, especially sentient beings, don't mind the sirens outside, but everything, especially sentient beings, has a spirit. So I do believe that. I believe that everything is energy. I believe that everything is sort of animated in that sense, that everything is alive, that everything is vibrating. That's my personal belief. And so there is a hint of animism in there. So many witches you'll hear witches say paganism. It's a nature-based religion. It just means that they'll pray to, the elements, right? So if you cast a circle in a witchcraft circle or Wiccan circle or whatever, when you cast a circle, you call in the elements. You're calling in the spirits that are represented by the elements in the physical plane. So what a lot of witches believe is that these are sort of spirits, that these are sort of entities, right? Like that earth has its own entity, that air has its own spirit, its own entity, fire, water, right? All have its own sort of spirit to it. And that there is a connection to all nature, to all sentient beings in a sense, right? So many witches believe that. I believe that, but on top of that, as far as what my beliefs about God, I actually believe both of those. So I do pray to, I do call in the help of certain gods and goddesses. I work a lot with angels. I work a lot with ancestors, you know, all of that kind of stuff. It's all very intuitive for me. Some of it is research based because I enjoy that, but when I'm doing the actual work, it's intuitive. When I'm doing the actual witchcraft, it's intuitive. I also believe in the same concepts of animism, which is that nature has its spirit. I believe that everything has a spirit. And that leads me into what my core belief is and what this sort of new age witch is. I guess you could call it a new age witch. Is this new age belief system nowadays that we're seeing, this modern sort of mysticism. That is my belief. And that would be considered pantheism. So pantheism is the concept that all is God and all is one. That I believe that God is everything and all the spaces in between. That we are all one, we are all connected deeply. Now, not all witches believe that. You know, a lot of witches believe that just in the animism that nature-based things are connected in a way, but that nature isn't necessarily connected to everything and all things. I have the deep belief that everything is connected, that everything is one. In fact, that you are a reflection of me, that I am you and you are me, and that everything I experience from the world is merely an aspect of myself. Now, my beliefs also go into physics and metaphysics, right? So there's a book called A Course in Miracles. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I've been a student of A Course in Miracles for 10 years now. And so that is all about metaphysics. So I really believe in the concepts of the law of attraction. That's physics, right? The concepts and universal law, physics, those are also hermetic practices that were taught in ancient Egypt, right? So I really believe in physics, metaphysics, in the concept that science and spirituality, there really is no difference between science and spirituality, that it all is God, that science really is just the practice of witchcraft, if you really think about it. And that is my deep, deep belief. Now, with that said, I think that animism and the life of nature is another aspect of God. The life within me is another aspect of God. That love is God, you know, creation is God. But I also believe that we are all aspects of God, and that in source, in spirit, in the spirit realm, there also are many aspects of God. So when I call on the angels, or I call on the spirit of one of my lost loved ones, or my passed on, or my ancestors, or a god or a goddess, I'm calling on, to me, it feels like I'm calling on the soul of a being that isn't in the physical world, that isn't manifested here anymore. I don't believe in death. I do believe, of course, in the death of physical, but I don't believe from a metaphysical point that there is a such thing as death. I mean, from a scientific standpoint, there is no such thing as death because energy never dies. That's been proven for many, many years. And I believe that. That is my personal belief. I believe that everything is energy, and I especially believe that we here, just as there are angels or there are gods and goddesses, I believe that we on a soul spiritual level are gods and goddesses as well. And I believe that the energy of God, that what God is, which is the thing, the energy that created the soul that I am, which gave me the power to create the soul of everything I see around me, create everything, create my entire life, that power makes me also a goddess. And I believe that all of us here are gods and goddesses. So for me to pray to a god or a goddess or an angel or something, this is me personally. I don't speak for all witches, but I can tell you I probably speak for a lot of them. And if I do speak for you, I would love to hear that down in the comments just so everybody can kind of get an idea. For me personally, when I pray to anything in the spirit realm, I look at that as the exact equivalent of me calling on a friend. Except this friend knows their power. They know their power. And they don't have the limitation of the physical world and limiting thoughts, limiting them from being able to make something happen like that, right? But if I had just like a purely loving friend in the physical world, and it's just like every time I went to that friend, I just felt so in touch with myself. I felt so loved. I felt so supported. I felt so lifted up. I felt so inspired. That's the equivalent of me calling on my angels for me personally. And the only difference is that my angels never have an ego moment where they forget themselves or, you know, whatever. That's the only difference. They're not sort of flawed in that sense. That's how I believe it. I don't necessarily put gods and goddesses above me. I don't, point blank period. I don't put gods and goddesses above me in the sense that like I worship them and they know better than I do from a spiritual standpoint, right? I know that they probably know better than my ego knows, but I surrender to, like, I worship the soul within me because I know that the soul within me is the God within me. And I know that that comes from some greater aspect of God, Yahweh, which is sort of the pronunciation of God, the ancient pronunciation of God, Yahweh, Yahweh. If you ever want to chant and bring in that energy of God. But I believe that that is sort of the all oneness, omnipresentness. And I am an aspect of that. I am a branch of that. And I worship that within me and that created me. But I also know, not all the time, but I know deep within me that great Yahweh, God, that energy, that omnipresent, pantheistic energy, gives me the power to create my whole world. And that is what makes me a God. So the Bible would say, you know, God made man in his likeness. And I believe that that means that God gave me, that God gives me, because I am a part of God, God is a part of me, God is a part of me and I am a part of God, I then have the same similar powers to God that I can create something as well. Now, that doesn't mean that I have powers over other people because I believe that we all have the ability to tune into our own goddess or God, right? This is my own personal belief. That is how I see it. So just laying it out there, I've got a little bit of a whole bunch of pantheism, a little bit of polytheism, a little bit of animism, but for the most part, what I pray to is the one energy that is creation, right? The energy that is creation, the thing that makes an egg inside of a woman's body turn into spark humanity. That energy, whatever that is, that energy, that's what I believe is God. That's what I believe is in everything. And that's what I pray to. Now, I hope that inspired you. I really want to know what you feel, how that made you feel. That's my true belief. I stand so fucking stern in that. It's not even funny. That is my core belief. I know that in my mother fucking bones. In my flesh, in my DNA, it pumps through my veins. I know that to be true. But that does not mean that because I know something to be true, that what you believe that may seem different or you may call it something different is not true. I believe that we all live in our own universe. We're all creating our own universe in a sense. We're all creating our own dimension. And so from my thoughts and my beliefs, which are through metaphysics and physics, creating the world around me, especially creating, if anything, you can't argue with the fact that your beliefs and your thoughts about the world are creating your experience of it, right? And so because of that, there's 7 billion people in the world. We're all living and experiencing this world in a very, very different way, which also means that we could all read one book like the Bible and experience it very different. The reason that you don't hear this a lot in books of witchcraft, I believe, is because the witch is the one who, like me, has figured out how to know what God, Yahweh, the indefinable, unnameable thing that created all things, I know it in my bones. And so what it means to be a witch is follow a path where you follow that guidance, where you figure it out on your own what it really is, where you don't. So witch means wise one. And to be wise means to access some eternal thing within you. Now, I believe that there is a divine truth beneath all of our perceptions, whatever we think, however we perceive the world, right? So God speaks through us all in different ways, right? I'm a speaker, I am a singer, I am an artist, I am a musician, I am a writer. God speaks to me, speaks through me in these ways. I don't think that any religion, the ones that I know at least, can't really argue with that, right? We all sort of interpret God. We all express God in different ways, right? But I believe that beneath it all, beneath our own human flesh, beneath the ability to even articulate anything, there is one truth. There is a whole truth. A lot of us get lost. We feel like we're not connected to our true soul, our true self, to what I just described, and I feel so certain about that. That feels like connection. That feels so good to me, to feel so connected and so sure about that. And when you're not, I'm not always in that space, I lose faith all the fucking time. But when we're not in that space, we feel confusion. We start through physics, and the law of attraction, we start actually picking up thoughts that don't even belong to us, because thoughts never die, because energy never dies. So it's all sort of floating through the ether. And if you vibrate with a certain energy, maybe it's an energy of feeling lost, feeling like you're not connected to the soul within you. You're not as certain as I am right in this moment about what God is and who you are and how it flows through you. You'll start picking up confusing energy, thoughts that aren't true. This is my belief. Thoughts that aren't true. And I believe that there is one true essence. And I also believe that the only way to find that, maybe this is where we get sort of lexicon and verbiage in certain books, religious books, that say there is only one way to get to God, essentially. I do believe there's only one way to get to God. I believe that it looks very different for a lot of people, but I believe that we must find a way to to abandon the world, abandon all those crazy thoughts that are going through our mind, detach. We must find a way to detach in some way, meditate, pray, do some sort of artistic expression, whatever it is, to cleanse our minds, to clear, so that God can come through us. I believe that we all have a God mind. We all have a divine truth within us. It is constantly flowing to us, but we have all this shit in the way. And when we cleanse ourselves, we clear ourselves, we quiet our minds. I do this through meditation. Many witches do this through meditation. I don't believe that you can really practice witchcraft I don't believe that you can really tune into your true power without some form of meditation. Now, whatever works for you, but there needs to be this aspect where you completely quiet your mind. And a lot of times we go into a trance-like state. We go into gnosis. There's many ways to practice going into a gnosis or Gnostic state in order to, some people call it REM state. There might be, hypnosis. You kind of get into this. Is it alpha? Is it the alpha state? Alpha, beta, that whole thing where you raise your vibrations to a certain point, even in a REM state, like when we sleep, but we can access that state outside of sleeping and sort of replicate that. There has to be this moment where we go into that, because when you do that, you access truth. This is my belief. You access truth. Now, this has been done for centuries upon centuries upon centuries. This is why, as I said earlier, that so many different civilizations across thousands of years apart, thousands of miles apart, no way to communicate with each other. Somehow they receive messages that are so similar, but interpreted just a little bit different. So similar. The goddess, the form of the goddess, looks so similar through so many civilizations. Just like so many spiritual beliefs and concepts. They just were translated a little bit different through whomever was articulating them. That's when things start to get lost in translation. The true meaning of something gets lost in translation. That is why it's so important to know this stuff in your own being. It's so important to know this stuff in your own being. Whether you're a witch or not, I believe it's so important to know this stuff in your own being, because if you don't know it in your own being, somebody else is going to tell you something that's not true for you. Somebody else is going to tell you who to pray to and how you're supposed to pray. And that's such a sacred thing that you can't give that power away. And so, I don't care what religion you practice. There are Christian witches. Sorry to all the Christians that want to come on and tell me that I need to be burned at the stake because I'm a witch. There are Christian witches. I am actually Catholic. Hey-o! I'm not giving you the finger, I swear. I have a cross tattooed on my ring finger, which is my devotion to Christ before any man. Before I get married, I'm married to God. I'm married to Christ. I have a huge rosary tattooed on my hip. I have had that for many years. I have followed a very interesting, probably similar to a lot of people, spiritual path. I was baptized Catholic. I was raised Christian. I sort of strayed away from all religion. I actually had a very beautiful experience in Christianity with my church. And I didn't even go to a church. I went to a meeting hall. And the people there were so loving. I could see a light coming off of them. It was really beautiful. And my whole life, I had a really beautiful experience of Christianity. It wasn't until I got older that I started having people who claimed to be Christian or of some sort of a Christian branch of Christianity and telling me that I'm going to hell. I've never, ever, that's never been my experience of Christianity. I don't believe that that is truly what it means to be a Christian. Because to truly be a Christian is to walk the path of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ would have never, ever told anybody that they were going to hell. Jesus Christ never said that. I don't even think there was a hell then. I don't know, maybe. But, Jesus Christ was walking around being the expression of love and forgiveness and kindness. And that's the path of Christianity. That's the whole point of Christianity. And so that is truly what I experienced in my own experience of Christianity, being, baptized Catholic. Now, the Catholic Church, that was a little bit different. That's where there were a lot of rules, and I never found God in a Catholic church. I found God in my Christian meeting hall. I found God in the people who claimed to be Christian. I really believed that they were. I saw Christ in them. I saw a Christ light in them. Never saw a Christ light in any Catholic church in my entire life. I saw a lot of rules. I saw a lot of ritual. No God ever in a Catholic church. My personal experience. And, as I got older, I started to, live my life, and my family, we weren't going to church like we used to go to church. And then I started having people tell me I was going to hell, and I was like, screw this. That's not, I don't want religion if that's what it is. And I think a lot of people are leaving Christianity because of that. I think that the basis of Christianity is really, really beautiful, but a lot of churches, a lot of people in wanting to be power-thirsty people, a lot of people just wanting, that feel a lot of shame and want to project that onto others. Because they feel shame, because they've been shamed by their religious leaders. And that's not what I truly believe Christianity is. I have a very beautiful relationship with Jesus myself. He comes to me in lots of meditations, and he's come to me before I was ever a witch. And I moved to Texas. They're real thick in Christianity. And I met a lot of really beautiful people when I was 22, when I moved to Texas. I met enough beautiful people that were deep, deep in their Christian life and beliefs. And they showed me a lot of love, and they explained a lot of the Bible in a loving way to me. And so I started reading the Bible, and I started becoming religious. And that's when I started getting rosaries and such tattooed on me, and crosses. And then I needed something more, and I started finding metaphysics and started understanding not only a Christ heart, but a Christ mind. I started understanding that God isn't something here only that just comes and heals you and helps you and created you, but that God is this whole mindset, and that I actually do have the ability to be a goddess myself, in the sense that I have the power of God. And I believe that because God has endowed me with her, or his power, its power. And so, my beliefs have sort of evolved over the years. But I think it's very funny. I do get a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of witches, at least witches that are out in the world. Definitely, if you've seen on my channel, I know a lot of other witches, get a lot of people who claim to be Christian or, quoting Bible scripture and shaming me. It's sad to me. Because I do know Christianity, because I am Christian. I was raised Christian and I am Catholic, and and I never had my early life never had a bad experience through Christianity, and I know that what they're spewing is not Christ. And so, whatever. You can't change the way people feel or think or whatever, but I honor so many different religions. I have studied Taoism, I've studied Buddhism, I've obviously studied Christianity, and now witchcraft. And so there is so much, there's a million things that we could all argue about. Yeah, that's true. We could argue about the differences in all of our religious beliefs and yada, 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 but we're missing out on the gold. We're missing out on the magic. And I think most of you witches know this. You're taking this opportunity to experience God. The true God, the real God, the actual experience of God, love. You're missing out on that opportunity to experience love and the creation within you and the magic within you. You're missing out on that because you're trying to argue about who's right and who's wrong. None of that has anything to do with religion. None of it. Religion was created to help people have a path to get there. Some people took religion and tried to control with it. They made it a government, and they controlled their people with it. But that is not why religion is religion, okay? That's not the purpose of religion. That's not why God has brought all these different religions. God has brought all these different religions to say, find a path. Find the one that works for you, that feels good. These are little hints to finding me, but not one aspect of any of the dogma of religion is God. None of that actually is God. It's merely a suggestion for how to find it. Now, some people may believe, no, this is the only way. It may be the only way for you. I'm not arguing with that. I know that there is only one way for me. I know that I can't live my life not letting God into all aspects of my being. I know that I can't live my life not devoted to God because I suffer. That's me. I don't believe that everybody's on that same path. That's just me. And I certainly am not going to try to change other people, because the God in me would never want that. That would only be my ego. So this is a really long-winded video, but it's also a really, 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 really big topic. So, I wanted to really show exactly how I feel and my beliefs, my opinions about religions, my core beliefs, my spiritual, my true experience of God, so that I could help you find a way if you haven't found a way, and also, give other witches the opportunity to kind of comment down below and say, how much of this is what you believe, and is there I would guess you probably have a different way of articulating it, maybe it's exactly the same, and I've articulated it better than you could have articulated that. I get that a lot, to be honest. I really think that God's work for me, God's working through me in a way that, my magic is in articulation, and I can't tell you how many thousands of people have said, oh my God, you're saying everything I've believed all this time. I just couldn't articulate it like that, or I never thought to articulate it like that, and you're just speaking my truth. And that's beautiful. And let us know down below, and even non-witches, if you believe the same thing as me, let us know. Or if you believe something different or a little bit of a variation. None of it means that any is wrong or right or whatever. We're all living in our own universes, essentially. We're all living our own lives, our own experiences. We're all in our own minds. You can't argue with that. I'm not in yours, you're not in mine. Doesn't really matter what's going on in my head. It shouldn't affect what's going on in yours. And what I believe doesn't make what you believe wrong. So there it is. In a nutshell, witches believe a whole bunch of different things. But for the most part, we're pretty here. We're pretty even for the most part. And I would say if you could put witches, just one last thing, if you could put witch in a nutshell, I would say individual. They take their own path, individual. They believe, what their spiritual beliefs are is mostly intuitive, which makes it individual, you know? It is it is the true experience of God, not what somebody else told them to believe, right? Maybe a little bit of that, or they found their way through that, but for the most part, I would say that a witch's religion is the path within. There it is. Yeah. Cheers to that. There it is. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. That was a nice, long, juicy one, and I really don't think I'm going to clip it down too much because I think that this was huge. You might need to watch this in 2 parts or whatever, but I think that this was a lot of information that so many new witches have really been craving, and even some witches that have been on the path for many years and kind of just felt not as connected to their magic for a while. Maybe this helped you reconnect. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it helped clear things up for people who judge witches. We've definitely been brainwashed into believing that witches have anything to do with dark, satanic, evil type of things. And I'm definitely going to do a video on the difference between black magic and white magic. That's definitely something that needs to be said and cleared up. That should be really interesting and sort of fun. Yeah, I send you all love. So much love. This is a weird thing to say, but I hope to meet you in the ethers. When we're all meditating and we're all connecting with that the one truth that is able to be connected to across thousands of years and hundreds of different civilizations. I hope to meet you there in the ether of the truth. All right, guys. I'll see you next week.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to connect with me outside of YouTube, head on over to my Instagram to say hello, watch behind the scenes stuff, and check out any special announcements that I might have going on. Now, if you haven't already, head over and watch one of these awesome videos and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on the next video, guys.
That's where my dreams come in and take me away to a better place where love is real and all my